Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to be installing the wood stove inside of the truck camper. I've got a ton of products here, a couple of tools, and I'm just going to walk through the reason why I'm going to be installing a wood stove inside of the truck. And then I want to go through some of the items that I have, some of the basically the stove jack and the piping and all that stuff. And then we're actually going to get started installing it, and you will see this stove burning today in this video. So let's get started. Okay, so to get things started, why am I choosing to put a wood stove inside of my truck camper instead of discovering or kind of seeking out other options? And the other main options are propane heat. So a lot of people use the buddy heater, which is an excellent heater. It runs on propane. However, there are some downsides to running that. Propane puts off a nasty smell. It just stinks. It also puts off a ton of moisture, and you're still running a gas bottle inside of the camper, and I'm not a fan of running combustible gases or liquids. So that's the reason why I'm not going with a buddy heater with a propane system. There is electric heat, which is probably the best option. It's instant on, instant off. It's odorless. It's very safe. However, it chews up a ton of electricity, and I'm not about to use 4 to 5 battery units just to run heat. So another option for running heat inside of the truck or a camper van or a tiny home is a diesel heater. That means you need to have an actual fuel tank full of diesel, and it is quite a large install. You still have to drill holes in the bottom of the truck, one for an air intake, one for an exhaust. There have been issues with some people having actual carbon monoxide pooling underneath of their vehicle, and then it's seeping up into the vehicle. There are also issues with driving off-road, having some hoses and whatnot come disconnected, and that can create a lot of dangers inside of the vehicle as well. Not only that, you're still hauling around liquid fuel, and like I said, I don't want to have gas or liquid fuel inside of the camper. It just chews up too much room. It's a very large install, and it takes up a lot of room, and it still runs on electricity. Mind you, it's very, very low amount of electricity. I think it pulls like 20 to 30 watts. Not a lot, but it still pulls electricity to run heat. So landing on the wood stove idea, wood stoves are basically free to run. They do run on wood, so you can go out camping, gather wood from outside, load it in the stove. In my case, I'm actually going to be using little bricks of sawdust, so they're compressed sawdust bricks. I'll be showing that a little later on in the video. But load one of those in, it'll burn nice and clean. I can light it, I can have the wood stove with nice dry heat, no smell, no fuel, no gas, none of that stuff. So for me, wood stoves seem to be the best option. It's the safest option for me. I do a lot of stuff with wood stoves, and the setup that I have, which I'm going to show you in this video, is rather safe. So I'm not too worried about anything happening in that sense. And I can cook on top of it, which makes this an excellent source for heat and for cooking. So let me show you the products that we're going to be using today to install the wood stove. Okay guys, so looking at some of the products we're going to use today to make this possible. Number one, we do have the wood stove. I am using my Pomali T1 Mini 3. That is a titanium wood stove. We have some stainless steel stovepipe sections. These have been pre-burned. I do have some new ones inside of the box just in case we need some different lengths. For the fittings, we do have 45-degree fittings. Now this is a short 45. This is more of a long curved 45. So I do have options as far as that goes. I do have some nuts and some bolts that we're going to be using to attach the stove jack, which is the most important part right here. So what this is a deck plate made for boats. It is marine grade 316 steel, so it's not going to rust or corrode. It's the size for the pipe basically. It has 4 holes that are countersunk, which we're going to drill holes in the top of the cap as well as the main hole. On the bottom it does have a 1 centimeter lip, so this will actually sit inside of the roof a little bit. On the top you do need a tool to undo these, but I have this loosened off very nice, so I can just do it by hand. The lid portion actually has an O-ring built into it, making this completely waterproof. Of course we're going to run silicone on the bottom, but this is basically waterproof once it's sealed up and you're driving the truck. When you get to camp, unscrew this, put your stovepipe out through the top, and I am going to be adding a silicone baking sheet to basically seal up, because the pipe goes through like that, and there is a kind of like a, I don't know, I want to say 1/2 centimeter gap from the pipe wall to the edge of the stove jack. I'm going to be adding a silicone baking sheet. So basically I'm going to take the baking sheet, put it down on a flat surface, put the pipe down, take a marker, trace around the outside. I'm going to cut on the inside of that marker line, which will leave me with a silicone baking sheet that I can then press over top of the pipe, which will be a really snug fit, and that'll basically rest on top of here. So the configuration is going to look like this. So pretend the wood is the roof of the truck. That's going to go through, and then the silicone baking sheet's going to go over, and that'll basically stop any rain, snow, or bugs from entering inside. No water can run inside because this is actually probably about 4 to 5 millimeters thick. So it's actually elevated off the roof, so no water can run in and go down. And I think that'll work really well. So let's get started. So before we do get started, I just want to show this deck plate in closer detail so you guys can see. There is an O-ring right there, right on the lid. This basically sits in, and then you can thread it in by hand. And once it hits that O-ring, it does get a little tight, and that creates your water seal. There are special wrenches that you can actually clamp down in here to help turn that, but I find doing it finger tight is sufficient enough. There's a look at the top, countersunk holes for the screws. There's a look at the bottom so you can see how much recessed this is going to be inside of the roof. And there's a look at the bottom. Okay, so taking our stove of choice, I'm going to unfold the legs. Now I will mention that there is going to be a heat shield on the back, on the side, on the bottom, and as well as the tailgate, because when the tailgate shuts there is going to be heat kind of hitting the back of this. So there will be a actual metal heat shield protecting all of these areas. For the bottom, I think I'm either going to use ceramic tile or fire brick, a nice inch, maybe 1.5 inch thick brick, just to go underneath. It'll help hold a lot of heat. It'll also help dissipate the heat so it won't do any warping or any burning of the wood. So that's very important. That is not installed right now. I will be doing that at a later date, possibly in this video, I'm not sure. But basically, looking at the wood stove, that is the fitment right there. There's ample room on the back, like I said, for the heat shield. This stove is a stand-in stove. It will be functional. It will actually burn in the truck until I get my finalized stove. And I believe the finalized stove is only going to come to here. So it'll go from the front to the back. And basically, it's big enough of a stove to run the little bio bricks of sawdust to put in, put 1 or 2 of those in, and that's it. This truck camper being the square footage of a typical solo teepee, this stove will get this camper extremely hot. So I'm going to be damping this way down and putting 1 brick in there and letting it burn for 4 or 5 hours in a coal pile. And that'll heat the truck very nicely. These 2 windows on the side open up, so I'll be able to open up and vent out a lot of heat if I need to. But just to give you guys a basic look, if you guys have not been following the build series, this is where the stove is going. There's ample amount of room all around. And then we're going to be taking these pipe sections. Now, originally I was going to do a 45 out and then have a straight pipe section. So I was going to come up and then out and then up. But now I think I'm just going to go straight up, 45, 45, and then straight out the roof. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because I don't want the elbow being too close to the roof. The elbow is going to hold a lot of heat, so I kind of want it down and away from the roof a little bit, but I want to keep this area open so I can actually walk in and out. As you can see, I've got loads of room down here by my feet, and I purposely made a gap on my bed large enough that it's not going to actually burn anything. And I put a lip on top of the bed to hold my mattress on, so that's not going to fall off. So that's all been taken into consideration. It's hard to tell on camera right now, but what's happening is the stovepipe is running straight up and down, but the portion of roof that I need to go through, because the roof is curved, and the portion that I need to go through, I want to have the least a bit of curvature to it, is what I'm trying to say. So I need to come out this way, but then I also need to go back. So right now, this pipe right here up top is actually angled towards the back, and then it's going to go straight up. So I think this is actually going to work really well right here. I may have to cut this down to add the other 45, so that's probably what I'm going to do. And I think that'll work out really well. So I'm going to take a marking on this pipe, I'm going to cut it, and that'll go up through, and then we'll make a mark, and we'll get our hole saw attached to the drill, and we're going to do the deed after. I'm going to look at it probably about 10 times off camera, just to make sure that's exactly where I need it to be, because once there's a giant hole in the roof, there's no going back. So I'm going to fiddle around with this before I get the hole saw out, and then we'll get that hole in there, and then we'll start working on that deck plate to get that on there. Okay guys, so after fiddling around a little bit, I finally settled on this configuration of pipe. So looking more on this angle, you guys can see what I'm talking about. The pipe is not straight with the stove. That would put it out a little bit just out of place. So it's going to be angled just slightly, just to get me in this nice kind of flatter area to drill through, because I don't want to be too hard on that curve. Not only that, the roof is constructed of, I believe it's 1/2 inch or 1 inch plywood. It's quite thick. There's a noticeable difference between the center. So it looks like the whole top is made of some pretty thick plywood, and then that's wrapped in the fiberglass. So being kind of away from the edge enough to get that deck plate in, because that is a large diameter that I have to make sure that I have room for, I believe coming off to an angle just like that works perfectly. I didn't have to cut any of the pipe, so I'm actually really happy about that. One thing I will add is once this is all finalized, obviously this pipe won't rock around because it'll be secured inside of the stove jack, but every pipe connection, so down here on the stove, here, 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 and here, those are all going to be connected with hose clamps, metal hose clamps that I could tighten up with a screwdriver. So they are going to be clamped on very tightly, and I don't believe I'm going to need a support to actually hold that in place. If I do, I can always attach metal stay here to that hose clamp to hold it steady. There's only going to be like 1/2 centimeter wiggle room in between the pipe and the stove jack, so I'm not terribly concerned about that. There's far more play inside of hot tent. You can get going probably 2 to 3 inches, so I think this will work out really well and it'll be safe. Of course, I am going to be adding a CO2 monitor and fire extinguishers inside of the truck. I do want to mention that as well. But this setup right here gives me ample clearance from the back wall, the side wall, the tailgate, the window, and the other window, as well as my light bar up here. There's a lot of clearance around everything, and I think this will work out really well. So I'm going to take a marker, and I'm just going to put a little dot right where that needs to go. I'm going to get a drill bit on my drill. I'm going to drill out through the cap, and then I'm going to put my hole saw on and go outside and drill down through the top with the hole saw. And hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well, because I'm going to be a little upset if it doesn't go well. But we'll make it work. So let's get that hole drilled in there and get the hole saw hooked up, and fingers crossed everything works out well. All right, having a bit of a coffee break right now. I'm kind of nervous about drilling this because it's a giant hole, but I know it's going to work out, so let's just get the deed done. So for doing this project, I did purchase a hole saw kit off of Amazon, and this was actually delayed because it didn't arrive on time, but it is here now. Where did I put my deck plate? So the hole saw bit that I'm going to be using actually fits exactly perfect with the size of the deck plate. And when I say perfect, I mean absolutely perfect. So that'll be a really nice fit inside of there. And then, like I said, I'm going to run silicone all along the top and around the bolt holes just to make sure that it is a watertight seal. I'm even going to squirt a little bit of silicone in there when I insert the bolt. And then that should be a watertight seal. So I'm going to get this hole saw configured. I'm going to jump up on top and hopefully drill a nice clean hole inside, and then we'll be able to get this mounted. And it does look like it may rain today, so I'm kind of in a little bit of a hurry because I don't want a giant hole in the top of the truck and it start raining. So let's get this hole drilled and get the deck plate mounted in there. Alright guys, so the hole is drilled, everything went really well. I did have to do it from both angles, so I had to drill from the top, and then my hole saw actually bottomed out, so then I had to come inside and drill it out. It lined up perfectly, so that's the inside, that's the outside. I'm really surprised with what is inside though. It's not plywood. I thought it was actually plywood. It's more of a corrugated kind of plastic. Yeah, it looks like plastic, corrugated plastic. So that's the plug. Now we're going to get the deck plate up top. I'm going to put some silicone around it. But first I do have to lay this in there, drill 4 pilot holes for the nuts and bolts, take it out, and then I'm going to squirt the silicone around, set it in there, pass those nuts and bolts through, crank it down, and then hopefully we'll be ready to light a fire in that wood stove. Alright guys, so as you can see I've got the deck plate placed in. There is a fat bead of silicone underneath already. I'm also going to add quite a bit of silicone on top of these screw holes so the screw carries the silicone down inside of it. I'm being extra cautious with the water seal because I'm only going to have one shot at doing this, so I might as well overdo it. And I can clean all that up afterwards once we torque these screws down and it starts to squirt out the sides. I think we'll have a very nice seal. So let's get some of these screws back down in the hole. There's 1, 2. This is going to be a little messy, but it'll all be cleaned up once we get this torqued down and secured. Alright, so I'm going to get a screwdriver, a wrench on the inside, and torque these down and then clean up the excess silicone that is going to squirt out, as you can see right there. And that is what's going to give us our seal. Okay guys, so we've got everything cleaned up. I cleaned up the work area, got the silicone cleaned up as well. And I'm just getting ready to run the additional pipe through the roof. I do have a spark arrestor up top as well, and this is the pipe section that connects to the stove. So what I'm going to do for simple setup, now remember, like I was saying, once this is all finalized and I'm actually using it, all of these connectors are actually going to be hose clamped on, so they're going to be very, very tight connection. But just to get this up and out, we'll take the spark arrestor off, we'll put the pipe through the roof, and then we'll attach this 45-degree fitting here. And hopefully everything will fit really nicely. Alright, well there you have it. Stovepipe through the roof. I actually think I'm only going to need one section of pipe. So we'll take that off. Put our spark arrestor on, and there we go. We've got a hot truck. Now if I do want to cut one of these down, I do have a short section of pipe right here. I could add just a short section onto this. Being gentle not to push down too hard because this is going to want to wobble around, so I do think I am going to have to make a stabilizer, and I'm going to show what I have in mind in just a moment. Alright guys, first fire inside of the truck camper, so let's see how this works out. Okay guys, so everything is looking really good so far. Now you'll notice up here I added an aluminum ring, and that was actually a scrap piece of metal just kicking around my house. That fit exactly in right where those bolts were, so all I did was took a round file and I filed off where each little bolt went, shoved it up in there, and then cranked it on with some nuts, and that is my retaining ring that holds this stovepipe still so it doesn't move around at all. And it's actually working to block the falling rain, which is outside right now because it is raining. No water's making its way in, and that's without a silicone sheet on top on the outside. So that's a nice little metal retainer that's holding the pipe, and it's helping to reflect some of the heat from going out. Okay guys, well it is raining now and I'm just about ready to get everything packed up and head inside. The wood stove is installed. As you guys can see, it is burning very well. I've got it damped down right now. Use this stick to open the draft up. So it is working really well. That's all I've got for you guys today. If you have any questions, drop it down in the comment section and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out guys.